Denise Gwen, reading aloud for you from my novel, His Christmas Eve Proposal, Book 3 of the Medicine Women of Alaska, Chapter 33. No matter what happened between them, Naomi realized this was it, their final reckoning. She had to leave Gnometown. She'd ruined her career and life, and it was all her fault, and she had to start over yet again. Drew had his secret sorrows, this she knew. But he didn't understand what she'd gone through. He really didn't. He possessed enormous reserves of patience and kindness and compassion, but he had no idea what she'd endured in the days and months following her breakup with Ricardo. And until he went through something on that epic of a scale, he'd never understand how deeply humiliating an experience it'd been. Naomi had enjoyed one blissful, beautiful, beyond description night with him, but now it was over. She had to pick up the pieces and get on her way. It wouldn't be too hard for her to close her practice. She was fairly certain of that. And she'd simply send all her patients back over to Drew. All the disappointments she was racking up wearied her soul. She disappointed the Velasquez family, she disappointed Drew, she disappointed herself, and worst of all, she disappointed her father. All of her secrets, everything she'd been running away from had caught up to her on that bleak mountaintop outside of Gnometown. And for all her effort, for all the work she'd done, it'd been for naught. And now everybody was upset with her. And the press were waiting around the corner to pounce on her. When would she ever escape her tormented past? She noticed Drew gazing at her. "What are you thinking?" he asked gently. I'd like you to take me home," she stammered. "Are you sure?" he asked, gently caressing her chin. "Why don't you come with me to Anchorage to pick up my brother?" He smiled down into her eyes. "Wouldn't that be fun? I'll bet you haven't really had a chance to explore this area, and the drive to Anchorage is beautiful." I'm sure it is," she said, her chin trembling. "But I really need to get back to my office. I've got charts to finish." He looked sad, but appeared to acquiesce. "Okay," he said, "let me take a quick shower and then I'll be ready." "Okay," she said, relieved. "Thank you, Drew." As he walked away to his bathroom, she walked into the kitchen, rinsed off the breakfast dishes, and loaded the dishwasher. The dishwasher was pristine, which told her it didn't get much use. This made her sad because it meant that Drew didn't cook that much. As the dishwasher started its cycle, she wandered over to the plate glass window and gazed out at the expanse of Drew's property, her gaze finally lingering on the crystal clear blue lake below. That was beyond strange. Not 72 hours earlier, she'd hiked around the far end of that lake. Their leisurely day off together culminated in disaster on the mountaintop. Well, let's be honest here, she thought with a wry smile. The day had actually ended in his bed, with Drew making love to her, and had been the most blissful moment of her life. In that moment, she'd forgotten all her troubles, all her secret sorrows. She'd forgotten for the moment who she was and the disappointments of her life. All she thought of in this snug cabin was being with this amazing man. For the first time in a long time, she'd felt at peace with herself. Drew walked into the great room and he looked so handsome. But he'd looked even better when he was completely nude. She shook her head. She couldn't afford to think that way, not ever again. You ready? He asked. Yes. They walked silently out to his truck. He helped her up into the cab, then shut the passenger side door and walked around to the driver's side, slid behind the wheel, and drove back into town. It'd been on the tip of her tongue with every passing mile to say something to him, reveal to him how much he meant to her, how very much she appreciated all that he'd done for her, what a tremendous change he'd effected in her life. But the words died in her throat, so she gazed out the window at the passing scenery. Sooner than she expected, Drew pulled up in front of her medical practice and killed the engine. She sat there, her hands in her lap. Last night, she said hesitantly, was wonderful. It was a lame thing to say, but it was the best she could think of, and at least Drew didn't appear to think that what she just said was lame. It was wonderful for me, too. And Naomi, I know we didn't make any promises to one another, but I have feelings. No, she said, placing her fingers on his mouth. No more. Don't say anything more. But I want to, he said, seizing her hands and holding them close. Naomi, you're a wonderful person and a tremendous doctor, and you shouldn't let one mistake ruin your entire life. You mustn't waste your talent. And I want you to know just how much I care for you. I'm crazy about you. I want you in my life. She gently, yet firmly, withdrew her hands from his grasp. Go get your brother. Come with me to Anchorage, he said. Please, Naomi, you'll love it. No, she said firmly but kindly. Patients to tend to. Which was a complete lie. She climbed out of the cab and left the door open for one last goodbye. I'll call you when I get back, he said. Okay, she said, while she wondered what she would do. She was going to pack up her stuff the minute she got into her office, tell her nurse to start closing her practice, and then load up all her stuff into her car and get the heck out of Gnometown. How about dinner when I get back? He asked. Well, let's hold off on that for now. She looked away, hoping that he wouldn't call her on it. She hoped to be out of town by the time he returned to Gnometown this evening. She slammed the door shut before Drew had a chance to say anything further to persuade her to change her mind. She turned her back on the truck and hurried away inside her medical practice. Pulling the key from her pocket, she let herself in the door, brushing away the tears that ran down her cheeks. Her decision was best for Drew. Perhaps not good for her, but she had to protect his heart and her own. Oh, Naomi. And the pressure got so bad that I realized I didn't want to take it anymore, so I ran away. I ran away from the altar. I ran away to the furthest reaches of the country to escape it all. And damned if the whole Velasquez family didn't chase me out here. And besides all that, Drew, I didn't deserve to be happy anymore. I betrayed Dr. Velazquez and I betrayed Ricardo. I don't deserve forgiveness. Her bottom lip trembled. I deserve to be punished. Drew couldn't take it 1 second longer. The woman he loved was in excruciating pain, and he wanted, more than anything, to ease her suffering. He stepped forward and took her into his arms. At first, she resisted mightily, but then she relented and dissolved into him, her head on his shoulder, her torso still heaving with sobs. He stroked her strawberry blonde hair. You think you've got a lock on pain? You think you know everything there is to know about heartache? She lifted her head and looked at him. I have heartache too, he said gently, stroking her hair from her eyes. I was married to someone I thought would be as happy as I was to relocate to this hinterland. When my father started failing, I wanted to honor him by taking over his medical practice. And at first she was okay with it, but after a while, she became bored and angry. Oh. We divorced and she took off for a teaching hospital in Nebraska and has her dream career right now doing research, writing papers, and becoming renowned. Why are you blaming yourself for that? It was my fault for ever thinking she'd enjoy living in Alaska, that she'd embrace the solitude and the peacefulness the way I did. But I made a mistake in asking her to move out here, and because of that, she left me, and it's really all my fault. If you say so, Drew, but she came up here of her own volition. And she could have worked at any of the hospitals in Alaska. I think you're blaming yourself for something that isn't entirely your fault. I feel it is, though, he said. I feel the heartache. He was the cause of his heartache, and she was the cause of hers. They matched each other in misery.